Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to be doing some more scenic work. I'm going to be taking this blank wall here and filling it with some realistic looking model ivy using nothing but hanging basket liner and some used tea leaves. So it's really easy, stick around and I'll show you how I do it. So my secret weapon for today's project is this humble coconut fibre hanging basket liner. It's affordable and versatile, making it perfect for creating those delicate ivy tendrils that we're going to stretch across the building wall. So the first thing you obviously need to do is to cut out a section. I've cut out a little square. It goes an awful long way, and if you just peel these fibres apart, you can see that we get some nice little clumps. Like I say, just peel one section apart and you get three big sections there. So peel two sets apart and they start to separate out. So you want to create both clumps and strips to create our tendrils. So it really is just a matter of teasing the fibres apart until you get something which you want. So what I'm going to do is just pull several pieces out until we've got some nice sort of strips and mats. It's a good idea to pull apart all the sort of thicker pieces, because this is coconut fibre. You do tend to get some bigger pieces from the husk of the nut, the coconut. So you just want the very delicate strips. It's very natural looking fibre, so you can just pull out all the thicker bits that you don't want until you've got some nice pieces there. We're recycling used tea bags here to craft our leaves. You might have seen me using these in a previous video, which I'll link to up here. And we're going to give them a new lease of life by spreading them out and letting them dry. Now I've already done this previously, so you can see the process of that in the previous video, but here we have a nice tray of dried leaves. So the next thing we're going to do is just going to sprinkle some of our dried leaves into a pot and mix it with green paint. For extra thriftiness here, I'm using a recycled cottage cheese pot. I'm using some Vallejo model paint, olive green, it's acrylic paint, and we'll just mix some of that in with the pot. There we go, plenty of green paint, and I'm going to use a bamboo stick to mix it all up. Now, it's going to take an awful lot of paint to colour up. So, in true Blue Peter fashion, here's one that I made earlier. This is now fully dry, mixed in and dry. You do get much better results with these tea leaves if you leave it to dry naturally rather than try to force it in the oven, like I explained in my previous video. But here we have some nice leaf material that we can now start to apply to the ivy tendrils. So now comes the fun part. I'm just going to put some baking paper down onto the table to protect it. And we're going to paint quite liberally over our strands with some PVA glue, and then we're going to sprinkle some leaf material on. So take some time just to paint glue thoroughly over all our strands. So once you have your fibres coated generously with PVA, it's time for the fun to happen. So we'll take our pot of green leaf material and we'll just liberally sprinkle our matted area with leaves. There's two ways you can do this. You can either glue the fibres directly onto your wall or wherever you're wanting to put the ivy, or you can make the matting first. Now I'm doing this for a reason, so I can eventually spray it with varnish, because it's a lot easier to do it when it's not against something, so you don't get varnish where you don't want it to. So we're going to just cover this thoroughly, like so, and then we're going to leave it to dry. What I've done here is, as it's been drying, I've added some more layers of leaves with some spray varnish over the top, and now it's completely dry. I'm going to use some gloss varnish, and what that's going to do is add some luster and depth to the leaves. Now, I recommend doing this in a ventilated area or in a spray booth. So just liberally coat the leaves like so. So that's all fully set. We can just start by pulling apart into some smaller pieces. Of course, we're going to get a little bit of the leaves falling off, which you can always add to later on. If we end up with a few bare patches, we'll just pull off a few clumps now, and using some scissors just to snip off some of those bare parts, and just snip ourselves some smaller strands. We'll end up with a few layered pieces that we can then start to add onto the walls. To bring in the house now, we want to start by putting some little strands of the origin of the ivy into place. So we'll take a little bit of excess that we've got, and I'll just snip out some smaller pieces. We've just got a nice little sort of strand of growth here, and this is going to be our origin point. I'm going to fix this in place with some super glue. So a nice generous amount of super glue there, and we'll just stick our starting bit of ivy onto the wall like so. I'm going to take one of our ivy clumps now that we've pulled off, and we're going to start doing the same thing to that. I'm going to start adding it to the wall and using super glue again. So I'll just put some onto the back of this clump here, quite a generous amount. Just be careful not to glue your fingers. And of course, it's always great to work in a ventilated area. So we just want to apply these big clumps that we've made onto the wall and just push them into place. You could of course use PVA, it's just a little bit slower working. So as you can see, we've got quite a few loose tendrils here. I'm just going to leave those be for now until such time as we've finished applying the ivy. Now I'm going to create a nice big thick lush growth of ivy up the side of this building, so we're going to add quite a few layers. So this piece will do quite nicely for here, and again quite a bit of super glue onto the back just to make sure it's held in place. I'm just going to push it in place in this position here. A little bit of activator spray will of course hold it all in place. This is some super glue activator. Fully recommend using that whenever you're using super glue. It just speeds the process up a whole host quicker. Now, any bits that you've got left lying loose, we can use some PVA glue there and stick it down. I just want to create a bit more of a mat first. So in creating a nice lush growth of ivy over the side of this house, we just need to keep adding lots and lots of layers until we're happy with what we want it to look like. So again, we've got a nice big bare patch here, and I can just apply this lovely layer of ivy over the top. And of course I want it to grow over the top of the house. Spinning around to the front of the house now, I'm just going to put a bit more super glue on these ledges here and onto the underside of the matting. And I'm just going to give it a quick blast of activator spray and stick it down. And just use a little bit more ivy around the corner here. And I think it's going to need a little bit of PVA just to glue those tendrils down. And that bit there, we can just stick down with a bit of super glue. Of course, it's going to end up on my fingers, as it always does. So for all those loose bits of tendrils, etc., rather than risk super gluing everything up, we're just going to stick those down with a little bit of PVA. To cover up some of those bare patches that we've now got appearing, we can go back over now just paint on some PVA and add a little bit of extra foliage. So just a generous coating of PVA glue into some of those bare patches. And give that a nice gentle sprinkling of some of our excess foliage that we had left over. When I say left over, you should have plenty from what you make with your tea leaves. Just remember to sieve off the excess. Now once you've got your ivy on the wall covered, we can add a little bit more depth by creating a bit more ground creeping ivy, and it's just a matter of picking the right kind of pieces out of what we've made, just to add a little bit more foliage growing out of the ground. I'm just going to pick up some of the pieces that we've got left over and glue those to the wall. Like so, we can have a few sort of bare tendrils as well coming out. And some of those bare patches can then be covered up with some more foliage. I'm just going to use some hairspray now to fix in a little bit more foliage. And some of the bits of scraps of leftovers that we've got, we can just scrape up off the table and gently sprinkle on. And it's just a matter of layering up. If you're happy with the result, you can leave it there and just add a little bit more spray and pick up a little bit more excess foliage and sprinkle it into place. Yeah, we've got a nice bit of extra ivy growing along the bottom there, and I think with the exception of that little bit of tuft there, we're pretty much done. So with this technique you can create some rather realistic looking foliage, and it needn't cost the earth. Of course you can also make some small shrubs, some creeping vines, some bracken, brambles, anything you wish really. So I hope you've enjoyed this little explanation about how to create quick and easy ivy out of nothing but a hanging basket liner and some tea leaves coloured with paint. It's very quick and easy to do, and you can create as much as you want really for very little money. I hope you've enjoyed this content. If you have, please let me know by giving me a like, maybe a comment, and perhaps consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.